lights. Okay. Maybe that's a little bit better. Okay. So I told you guys that I would update you on what I was talking about yesterday, which is probably like the dumbest thing in the whole world for anybody else. But to me, it was like a really big deal. So when I was 5 years old, my parents decided to move out of the house that we lived in. And I think because I was 5 years old, I remember the house. I always had a very special affection for this house. And I always said, and anybody that ever knows me, I've said to them, if that house goes on the market, I'm going back to look at that house. Somewhere I felt like it may trigger some memories or it may bring back um, memories or maybe things that I've forgotten. Anyway, and I check on that house all the time. And when we first owned it, it was white with blue trim, which you know that I love that. And then I remember that my mother painted it yellow with brown trim, and that was okay. It was all right. I prefer the white with the blue. Now it's white with black trim, which, okay. Anyhow, so my parents moved out of that area because they didn't like the school district, and the area was starting to get a little bit like sketchy. And we moved to a neighborhood where they liked the school district better. And that was this town, and I've been here pretty much ever since. I mean, there are a couple of years I lived elsewhere, but not far. Anyway, so I've always had a very special affection for this house. And when I saw last week that it was up for rent, I'm like, I have got to go see this house. Like, I'm not going to say too much, but the person that owns it now obviously has it as a business. So so I kind of feel like my house was pimped out. Like if I had gone to the homeowner that owned it, that lived there, that loved it, that I could sit with and talk to about it, I think I would have gotten more out of it. But I kind of felt like I was just visiting like a hotel. Like it wasn't like this is my house. I loved it. I put my heart and soul into it, and now I'm renting it to you. It was almost like, okay, this is the property. What do you think? So I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm going to tell you exactly how I felt. When I pulled into the driveway, I felt like I came home. I felt like I came home. Like this is my house. I have no intentions of renting it. Like a friend of mine is actually looking for a place, so she came with me. So it would have been more for her. She was the one that was interested in actually moving forward. It's way too expensive for me, but when I pulled into the driveway, I felt like, oh, this is home. Like I remember this. But there are things that I remember a little bit different. The driveway is pretty long, a lot of parking, but I remember the driveway being longer. And it was very disappointing that when I got to the front porch, like the porch, like the paint was peeling and there was like garbage out on the front porch. Like that was disappointing. And I get it. Like, look, my house is lived in. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to tell you that this place doesn't need, you know, to be cleaned every now and again. I'm far from perfect. But I just kind of feel like if you have potential renters coming or a potential buyer, like maybe you would kind of clean up a little bit, or maybe you put a fresh coat of paint on the porch, and the porch, the paint was like peeling and kind of didn't look good. Anyhow, um, and when I walked in, what I remembered, and I actually have pictures of it. I won't put any pictures up. I mean, maybe I'll put pictures up from when we had the house, but when you open the front door, there was a distance, and there was a wall in front where my mother had this big gold mirror. I mean, it was a big gold mirror. Like, I don't know if it was like maybe 6 or 8 feet. And to the left was the staircase that went upstairs. But they had done something. They had taken out the closet that was on the left hand side and put a closet right in front. So there wasn't that long space. So that was weird. And to the right, where it was just the living room, there were two French doors, which I thought was really odd. Like, why would there be French doors in the middle of a house? But there we were with the French doors. The way it was when I lived there was, it's an old house and it had like this woodwork, like woodwork arches. There was three poles and like in one of the pictures I have, you could kind of see it in the, anyway, they're gone. And that was disappointing. And the doors were weird. But anyhow, the living room was smaller than I remember it because I think that with the doors there and the closet and cutting off that long area, like foyer area when you walked in, it shortened the living room and made it smaller than it was. And then the dining room was behind the living room, and they actually expanded that area. And it used to be you had to walk through the dining room to get to the kitchen. And while you still had to do that, it's kind of all one, like the dining room and the kitchen area are all one. And when I went upstairs to the bedrooms are a lot smaller than I remember them. The bathroom's a lot smaller than I remember it. But we couldn't go up into the attic because we couldn't go up into the, I don't know, God knows. Anyway. So then I went down to the basement, which was very odd for me. Now, this basement was something that I was afraid of. And going down to the basement, there was that pine paneling with the knots in it that I've spoken about before. But the rest of the basement didn't have any paneling. It was just painted. And they had finished the basement. When we had it, the basement wasn't finished. And what I remember is that it was very dark, very damp, and it smelled very musty down there. And there's the one improvement. It did not smell musty. It was finished. It was bright. There was a full bathroom down there. There was a refrigerator down there, and there were several rooms. I don't remember the basement being that big, but it also could be that I didn't really look or venture far back because I was kind of afraid down there. I was 5 when I left. Anyhow, so the backyard was disappointing. I didn't go out to the backyard, but I looked out like the windows and I could see that it looked run down and disappointing. And we couldn't see the garage either, which was also kind of concerning because if you're going to rent a house, you really want to see everything. But the guy that showed it to us was just kind of like, didn't ask a lot of questions, didn't tell us a lot about the house, but not that I needed that. I really just wanted to see it because, like I said, I have always wanted to go back to that house. I've dreamt about that house. I've spoken about that house, told people about it. If I ever get the chance, I'm going back to that house. And today I finally got a chance to go back to the house. Well, I actually thought that I would walk in and that it would make me cry, and it didn't. And I think it was more emotional pulling up to it because it looked like my house, but when I got in it, like the entranceway was different. So it didn't feel like I was coming home. The steps were very familiar. I'm going to say that that was probably the most familiar part of the house for me. The steps up to the bedrooms and the steps down to the basement, which still had the linoleum on it. Like that's very familiar. But otherwise, it didn't knock me over like I thought it was. Like I thought I was going to walk in and feel like, oh my God, you know, but it was a very odd feeling being back there. Part of me felt like I've waited for this moment for so many years. Like I couldn't, I've always said it, and now I finally got a chance to go there. And the other part of me was kind of disappointed because the feeling that I got was, like I said, like somebody was renting it out like it was a business, and I have no problem with people making money or having a business, but I didn't feel like it was somebody's home where like somebody was going to tell me, "Oh, that's where my son took his first steps," or "That's where we had our Christmas tree." Like actually the place where we had our Christmas tree doesn't really exist anymore because that's where the closet is now. And maybe I'll put some pictures if anybody is curious. I may put some pictures up of like my mom and I, like there's, I don't know why there's pictures of us at the front door. Like who takes a picture at the front door? But anyway, there's a picture of me, my mom, and she's holding my brother at the front door. And I don't know. I felt like I there were so many things that I remembered about that house, and some of the things have changed. Like, I used to walk up the stairs, and I was able to put the angel on top of the Christmas tree because the Christmas tree was kind of in the corner up against the stairs. And now you can't do that anymore because the closet's there. So that's changed, and that's kind of disappointing. And I didn't get to see the attic, which is disappointing, and I didn't get to see the garage or the porch, which is also disappointing. But I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad that I was able to see it. And I feel like more is going to start to come back to me since I've been there. And it was just a wild experience. I mean, it's not far from here. It's not like I couldn't drive past it every now and again. But I was even thinking yesterday that when I came back from taking Avery to um, skating lessons, I thought, oh, maybe I'll drive past it. But I decided not to. Anyhow, so that's the story with the house. But over the last week, I've just gone down a rabbit hole of like reconnecting with my past and like looking up. I wanted to look up like other people that had lived in that house and just find other information on it. Turns out the house it's old. It was born in 1930, but or 1935. But that's what I love about it. It's like there's history there. There are other people that lived there. Like I feel like, and maybe that's what I felt like was missing in the current days. Like I feel like that house was a home for families, and now I feel like it's more like people passing through. Like nobody is loving that house the way we did. I mean, it was beautiful when we lived there. The woman that owned it before us had been a florist, and the flowers that we had were beautiful. We had a tulip garden that had tulips in every color. We had roses, lilacs. I don't know that any of that is still there. The property itself is very big, but I don't know that that stuff is there. And that's disappointing. But in the spring and summertime, I remember, I mean, the smell of lilac will always take me back to that house. It just was so strong. And the flowers were so pretty. And I guess that when you're little, like the flowers are even bigger when you're little. So to me, it was just such a magical place. And the house itself is so charming because it's old, and it's like it's built. Like nowadays I feel like a lot of things are just kind of thrown together, but that was something that was really built, and it was charming and different, and it's not like a cookie cutter like everybody, it's like I live in a townhouse where like they're all the same. This is like it was just different. Anyway, I will always have affection for that house. It's a little sad to see it a little bit run down and maybe even being a little bit kind of abused. But anyhow, it is what it is, right? Life moves on. So anyway, in the rest of the research and nonsense that I've been doing, uh, there was an old friend of mine that lived around the corner. And we're just going to call her, for argument's sake, Christina, because I don't want to use her real name. But if she were to ever be watching this, she would know who she was. She would know why we was talking about her. And that would be fine. But anyway, so years ago, before, actually, I hope she does see it because maybe she won't think I'm so weird. I have funny feelings she thinks I'm really weird. Although, I don't know, maybe this isn't really helping. um, Years ago, before Facebook and way before like any of this Google and stuff like that, there was a company that was called US Search. And it was like literally like 1999 that you could put in somebody's name and they would send you their address. And it was like kind of a service, like supposedly it was confidential. It's kind of like reminded me of almost like the phone book, right? There was a time where we got a phone book sent to our house that had everybody's name and number in it and where they lived. Well, so I didn't think it was that strange. And I was at work and we had all been talking about people that we lost contact with. And years ago, it wasn't so easy to find somebody. Nowadays, you put their name in Facebook and they pop up. Um, so years ago, I paid for this service and they sent me her addresses. And I sent a letter and a picture of her and I at my third or fourth birthday. And I sent a letter to every address that they gave me. One was her parents' house. So I know that she got the letter. I mean, if she didn't get the letter, her parents got the letter. I'm sure that she had heard about it. And she chose not to reach out to me. Gee, I wonder why. Anyhow, sometimes it's like life happens and you just don't have any use to connect with somebody from the past. So I'm not really offended by it. I would have liked to reconnect with her, but she chose never to answer me. I think I'd given her my address and my phone number and she never reached out to me. So I left it at that. But every once in a while, I would kind of like see if she was on Facebook and I could never find her. Um, but in this same week that, in the same week that I was able to see the house, I actually did find her on Facebook. And you know what's so funny? I was in a dance recital when I was 5, and I don't have any memory of her being in the recital with me, but there is a picture of her in the same outfit. So her and I were in the same recital together. And I don't remember that. Now, I took ice skating lessons when I was a kid. I bet you she took ice skating lessons with me too, and I don't remember that either. Like, I don't remember her being there. I remember her and I going to like nursery school together for 1 year. And if I remember correctly, the second year she didn't go with me because she went full time because her mom went back to work and I only still went part time, if I'm remembering that correctly. Um, and anyhow, I remember like our moms taking us to the park. I remember like her mom giving us like a bath together, like when we were really little. I remember, um, and she was very like she was my best friend, right? She was my first friend, and like throughout the years, I thought about her so many different times. And like maybe like when I was getting my license, so I wonder what she's doing, or I wonder if she's doing this, or and just she's crossed my mind. So anyhow, so I did come across her Facebook page, and I'm not going to reach out again. I could change my mind, but the reason why I couldn't find her is because I was looking for her under her full name, like say her full name was Christina, thinking that maybe she would go by Chris or Chrissy, but I actually found her under the second half of her name, Tina. So, and I never would have thought of that. And then for some reason it hit me this week, and I'm like, let me just look. Let me just see if this is it. And I was like, wow. And then I just looked at a couple of pictures, and I was like, I just really wanted to know how life treated her, and it seems like life has been good to her. So I'm kind of satisfied with that. And who knows, maybe one day. she'll reach out to me, or maybe one day I'll reach out to her. But for right now, I'm not going to. And the funny thing is that I know that if anybody else was telling me the story, I would tell them to reach out to their friend, but I'm not going to. Not right now, anyway. I don't really feel the need to, and I don't really know that she would have room in her life for me anyway. And I reached out once and she didn't respond, so I'll leave it at that. But I'm glad that I got to see a picture of her, and I'm glad I got to see my house. And I think that in some way, even maybe not immediately, it could be very healing in the long run for whatever that means. So it's just been very interesting. Anyway, if you made it this far in this video, thank you for watching. Thank you, thank you. See you guys later. Bye bye.